How's it going, everyone? It's Tommy from Weather SpongeBob. Today is August 25th, 2021, and today we're going to take a look at three tropical disturbances that are currently in the Atlantic, and one of them could become our next major hurricane that could impact the United States. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. So let's begin by taking a look at the 5-day tropical weather outlook provided by the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. And you see that we have three tropical disturbances we are watching currently in the Atlantic, and two of them have a likely chance of developing. We have this one currently in the middle of the Atlantic, which has currently a 30% chance of developing over the next 48 hours, but 80% over the next 5 days. However, the good news is that it seems like it's going to remain out to sea, so it won't be much of any threat to land as of right now. So that's definitely good news. However, we have this other tropical disturbance we're going to be keeping a very close eye on because it is expected to impact land and potentially the United States at this point. And it has not only a likely chance of developing, but it could develop into a major hurricane later next week. So we certainly need to pay close attention to this. And then we also have this other disturbance currently centered in the May Devon region, which currently has a low chance of developing. And even if it does develop, it's expected to drift off northward into the open Atlantic and not be much of a threat to land. So let's take a look at disturbance number one, which currently it could be the biggest threat to us in the United States. So taking a look at the current water vapor imagery, you see that most of the convection is centered towards pretty much this area right over here, but we do see a decent amount of dry air centered just to the west of this storm, as there's a little bit of an upper level low centered right around the Florida Keys at this point, which is drifting a lot of the upper level clouds further northward along with the winds of this upper level low. So as a result, it is dealing with at least some wind shear, and the upper level low is bringing some stable air just to the west of the storm. However, all the convection is towards this area right now, and pretty much towards the northwestern portion of this convection the northeastern portion of this convection is expected to have just a little bit more convection and develop eventually into our low pressure system. So while the center circulation you might expect to be maybe right around this area, the center of circulation is expected to develop in the northeastern portion of this storm, where the computer models are detecting that we're going to see a little bit more convection on the northern side of this storm. So as a result, the center circulation should eventually develop up to the north of this storm and pretty much be the center of circulation for what will likely become Tropical Storm Ida at this point. But you see, it's not very organized. It's dealing with a little bit of wind shear, and there isn't really a well-defined center of circulation, but that is expected to change in the future. If we were to take a look at the current upper level wind map for the Caribbean, you see that the upper level winds in this region are very strong at this point, where we're seeing upper level winds in excess of 30 to 40 knots, which is very unfavorable for tropical cyclone development, and it's a reason why it isn't expected to develop, at least in the near future, within the next 48 hours, where we only have a 40% chance of development within the next 48 hours. Taking a look at that again, you're going to see that only a 40% chance over the next 48 hours. Let me go full screen here to get the better picture, and you see that just a lot of wind shear throughout this region in the Caribbean. Now, taking a look at the upper ocean heat content, you see that this is concerning because it's going to go over an area where where the ocean is not only just very warm, it's warm with depth. So even if this were to move slowly and upwell a lot of the deeper ocean water, it still would have just ample enough of latent heat to absorb from the ocean, since the latent heat is there's latent heat with the ocean depth as well. So the sea surface temperatures, or even the ocean temperatures in the deeper levels, will not at all be a problem with the storm, as there's just going to be just a lot of latent heat this storm could absorb as it heads further northwestward. Now, taking a look at GFS model is saying at this point. So the GFS model is taking a very concerning forecast for the Gulf of Mexico at this point. So if I were to continue to move forward, you see that here's pretty much the convection or the tropical wave we are watching, which will likely develop into Tropical Storm Ida. If we were to continue to move forward, you see that it's the northeastern portion of the storm that's expected to develop a lower level center, which it should be our center of circulation. And as it continues to move forward, the GFS model doesn't really develop it much in the Caribbean, at least as it heads further northwestward. It might be as a result of the ample amount of dry air that might be in the atmosphere. If we were to take a look at the dry air, you see that on the western side of the storm, it's going to deal with a lot of dry air, and plus this storm it's going to take some time for this storm to be vertically aligned to where the lower level center and upper levels of the atmosphere pretty much are vertically aligned rather than sheared apart or pretty much displaced from each other. And pretty much tropical cyclones need that lower level center and the mid level center to pretty much be in the exact same location to maximize the wind speed and convection within a center of circulation. And right now it doesn't seem like that it's very vertically aligned, so it's going to take some time over the next several days to really get vertically aligned to the point where we will see Tropical Storm Ida. It is likely to happen at this point, and plus there's dry air on the western side, so that should maybe limit it from developing much over the next several days. However, once this storm becomes vertically aligned, it's the GFS model is expecting the storm to be in a very favorable environment for tropical cyclone development, and it's almost expecting rapid intensification once this reaches the Gulf of Mexico. Because if we were to start right around this mark, you see that the storm is at 1,002 millibars. Let's go 24 hours out to 108. It goes down to 982 millibars, and even going 24 hours even more out, you see that the storm becomes a 945 millibar monster, which is equivalent to category 4, or pretty much almost equivalent to category 5 at 935 millibars, which would just be devastating. And the worst part is that it's gonna impact it may impact western Louisiana. And keep in mind, western Louisiana last hurricane season got pounded by two pretty much major hurricanes. We of course had Hurricane Laura, which made landfall right around Lake Charles, Louisiana, which was a category 4 at landfall, I think 150 to 155 miles per hour, and just caused immense devastation throughout Lake Charles, Louisiana. And then later during the hurricane season, I think in October, we had Hurricane Delta make landfall right around where Hurricane Laura made landfall, just a month earlier or two months earlier. I think it was Hurricane Delta. I could maybe be wrong about that. There were just so many hurricanes that formed last hurricane season. It's hard to keep track of all of them. I know Hurricane Zeta came close to Louisiana, so it might have been that, but I'm pretty sure it's Hurricane Delta that made landfall in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember it being pretty much borderline a major hurricane at 110 miles per hour. And to see potentially Hurricane Ida, a major Hurricane Ida, make landfall right around the same location at also a major hurricane status, it's honestly just very, very scary to look at for western Louisiana. But there's still a lot of uncertainty, because keep in mind, I'm going 144 hours out with this forecast, so 6 days out. There's still a lot that could change with the forecast. We could maybe see a further eastward track, we could see maybe a track further westward, or we could see a weaker storm, which would benefit everyone pretty much. But so there's still a lot of uncertainty. But based off of what the GFS model is saying, where the atmosphere is just going to be more than moist enough by the time this reaches the Gulf of Mexico, and the wind shear should be relatively light, or at least light enough for the most part for this storm to rapidly intensify, it's definitely just worrying to look at for the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the good news is that the European model isn't really lenient just yet on developing a major type tropical cyclone. If you were to take a look at the GFS model, the European model does like bottom this out right around 990 to 900, maybe 900, just below 990 millibars, which I'd say would be equivalent to maybe around a category 1 hurricane, which certainly is still something to prepare for the Gulf Coast, but it's certainly much better than the scenario where you could receive a category 3 to maybe category 5 hurricane somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's certainly good news. The European model is disagreeing, but the fact that there's a scenario where we could potentially see a category 5 type hurricane somewhere in the Gulf Coast, it's very concerning, and I'd say the Gulf Coast needs to stay at very high alert. So what would change the potential forecast for you guys, you might be wondering? Well, it really all depends on the amount of wind shear that's going to be in the atmosphere, because while the GFS model is forecasting light wind shear, it isn't going to be completely non-existent, because you see that right around the 54-hour mark on Friday, there's going to be an upper level high that's going to be located almost just over the lower level center, and that should create some wind shear throughout this region. And there's going to be a little bit of an upper level low located in the Gulf of Mexico, where there's currently an upper level low located in the Gulf of Mexico at this point. However, this upper level low is expected to pretty much weaken, move up northward, but this upper level high is expected to stay over the same area. Now, if this upper level high is just a little bit more displaced than what the GFS model is expecting, to where the upper level winds could affect this storm, that could certainly slow down the potential of development. And we also need to pay attention to maybe this upper level high that's located in this area, where we do see that there's going to be some wind shear in the western Gulf of Mexico. If that could move close enough, that could certainly limit the storm, especially since the upper level winds are going to come from the north, which is pretty much going against the direction this storm wants to go to and what the lower level winds want to steer this storm. And that should create a very hostile environment if that were the case. And of course, we also have this upper level high that's going to be located over here, and potentially another upper level lows and troughs moving through the United States that could bring higher wind shear. However, based on what the GFS model is saying, the GFS model does not expect this wind shear to be strong enough to really slow down this storm at all. Although there's going to be light wind shear, it isn't enough to really stop this storm from developing into a major hurricane. So that's certainly the worry, but I'd say there's still a chance that we could see maybe a little bit more wind shear if the GFS model does not detect that. If the GFS model does begin to detect that, there's going to be a little bit of displacement of this upper level high, to where it could bring strong upper level winds over this storm. So that's certainly something we need to keep in mind. We do have a little bit of an upper level low over the storm that's centered towards the Keys right now. However, it's expected to weaken. So it really all depends on this upper level high to bring the wind shear over this storm. So that's certainly something we need to keep in mind. Now, taking a look at what the ensemble members are saying, and you see that a vast majority of the ensemble members develop this into a hurricane, and quite a strong hurricane at that. And the darker blacks represent the millibar pressure between 960 and 970, which is equivalent to, I'd say, a category 3 hurricane, a major hurricane. And we do see that we do see the lighter reds, which represent 970 to 980, which I think still could be considered strong category 2. So it is possible we could see a major hurricane along the Gulf Coast. And you see the track of this, it's somewhere between Texas and Louisiana. And actually let me go back to see what will determine the track. So let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly for this storm to see what will be steering the storm over the next several days. So taking a look at that, you're going to see that there's a pretty big high that's located over this storm, and as this moves westward, it really pretty much a track really all depends on how big this ridge will be, how much weakness there will be in the ridging, because if there's a little bit more weakness, maybe as a result of this trough, we could see a track further eastward. However, if there's a little bit bigger ridging, we could see a track further westward. So we just need to wait and see how the track turns out over the next several days. Now, here's my current forecasted track. You see that I didn't put the strength forecast just yet because this storm needs to develop first before you get to say with confidence how strong the strength will be as it makes landfall. But you see that the Gulf Coast of Mississippi is in the cone, all the way to the western Texas coast, and Houston is involved. So all throughout these areas need to at least pay close attention to this, and even in areas as far east as the Gulf Coast of Alabama and Florida needs to pay attention, because when we're talking about a forecast 5 to 6 days out, a lot could change with the forecast, and we could see maybe a big shift. Right now, currently the most likely scenario is that this maybe impacts Louisiana and Texas as well as the Yucatan Peninsula, but you can't rule out the chance that we could see a bigger shift in the forecast that maybe impacts where it impacts the Gulf Coast of Alabama and Florida more. So pay attention to that, and major hurricane landfall is certainly possible for you guys along the Gulf Coast. So make sure to pay attention to that and stay on high alert in the Gulf Coast. I want to say prepare now since it's far too early. We need to get the specifics correct before I can say prepare now, but at least pay very close attention to this because this could potentially be major. Now, moving on to our next tropical cyclone that could form, that is likely to form. We have Invest 97L, which is currently located in the middle of the Atlantic at this time, and you see that it's to the northeast of Puerto Rico at this time, and based off of what you're seeing right now, you see that it isn't very well organized. We have several areas of convection. Typically, tropical cyclones need at least one area of convection to really develop into its max potential, and it's very rare to see a tropical cyclone have 3 different areas where we're seeing convection, as the energy needs to focus all in one area for its max wind speed to attain tropical storm status. But you see that we do have a decent amount of dry air, which might be limiting the storm a little bit, and we just have 3 areas of convection competing for air molecules and overall energy, so that's certainly limiting the storm. However, the good news is that with the storm, it's expected to move out to sea. It might develop into maybe hurricane status, but I'd expect by this time it should be extra tropical. And the good news is that currently it isn't expected to impact anyone, so I want to pay very close attention to this, as I think that this storm should drift off into the open Atlantic, and same goes for this other tropical storm, which or at least potential tropical storm, which does have a small chance of developing. But if we were to continue to move forward with this forecast, you see it's expected to drift off into the northern Atlantic and not really impact land much. So I want to pay attention to these disturbances, at least for now, since it doesn't seem likely it's going to impact land. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. And I hope you guys have a good day.